Hey everyone, massive welcome to all of our viewers on YouTube to a one-off special here on InfoSec Live, where today I'm going to be joined by Jada Porter to talk about the really important topic of the importance of inclusiveness and kindness in cybersecurity, and I hope probably the world as well. And of course, giving you, our audience, the chance to engage with and learn from today's guest. Now, Jada is a certified and experienced information security professional with over 10 years of combined experience in InfoSec and IT related roles. And currently she's the founder and CEO of the SaaSCE Boutique, an information security compliance consulting business. And in fact, I may even have here a little QR code for you to check out if you want to see more about it. They're a consulting business that is aimed to empower small to medium software as a service companies in tackling their security and compliance issues. And she's built her business around her own personal values of providing inclusive and nurturing environments for both employees and customers. And as a professional, she always expresses kindness and exclusiveness with her customers and colleagues because she feels that it's the best approach when trying to solve any problem together, and because you never truly know what someone is going through in their life. In fact, Jada and I have just had that very conversation before we've come on live today. On a personal note, Jada's married, has 3 beautiful children, and spends most weekends together, and their favorite thing to do is taking trips. And currently they are cruise fanatics and try to go once a year. A little bit jealous of that, Jada. But before we bring you on, Jada, and for those that are new to the channel, I'm your host, Simon Lindstedt, and by sharing stories and best practices over the last few months, it's led to nearly 200,000 views here on YouTube. By you, our amazing 11,204, I believe, today subscribers. And we mustn't forget where all of this started. It all started in the soon to be registered as a not-for-profit community, InfoSec Live, where we have study groups, mentor sessions, free mini courses and regular networking events to help you raise your game in cyber, no matter what stage you are in your career, giving you the opportunity to network now with over 6,000 cyber professionals all around the world. So make sure you check out the community if you haven't already. If you're too scared to scan that QR code because you already work in cybersecurity, I'll put the link for the SaaSCE Boutique, Jada's business, and for InfoSec Live in the description for the show after this today. So if you don't want to scan it, I will put that link in. And don't forget, each and every one of our live shows gives you, the audience, the chance to engage with and ask questions of our guests today. So make sure if you've got any questions, please do drop them in the chat. Time for me to stop rambling on. Let's get Jada on. Let's get chatting. Welcome.
Hi, Simon, and hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming on. I am going to just switch around these a little bit. So you are the star of the show today and put you in focus there. We spoke a couple of months back now, I think, and this particular topic isn't one that we've addressed directly on the show before, and I'm super excited to talk about it today. But before we do that, would you mind just giving the audience a bit of background about yourself? I suppose maybe what you did before coming into the industry and where that passion came from.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a very untraditional IT and cybersecurity background. I mean, for example, my start came from a library, working as a library technician, right? So you don't really get a lot of people that talk about, working on IT equipment in a library, right? So essentially my background is untraditional, and that led me to experiencing some things that kind of shook me a little bit in the industry as I got onto formal IT and security teams that kind of struck out to me to a point where I realized, I don't have to continue like this. I don't have to continue to experience this. I can create something for myself, a positive difference. And so that's kind of what led me to the SaaSCE Boutique, and instilled my values of creating an inclusive and kind environment for not only my employees, but also for those that we provide services to. So you did a wonderful introduction into me, and I definitely appreciate you taking the time to hear what I have to say today.
Not at all. Just bringing up your name there and the name of the firm for anyone that didn't see it before. So, have you had personal experiences of people not being particularly kind and not being particularly inclusive, Jada? And if you have, can you, without naming names and pointing fingers, probably for legal reasons, just talk us through a
Right.
little bit about that and how it made you feel?
Right. So I will go back to my first time on a traditional security and IT team that wasn't out of the ordinary, right? It just seemed different when I first jumped on because it seemed a little chaotic. It seemed like there was a lot of things going on. It didn't seem like there was clear structure of what was happening, right? And as a new person coming on board, I was coming into a new role that wasn't really defined either. And so there was already some natural struggles with that. But some of the issues that I experienced was the way I was spoken to. And then when I tried to speak, I'd be interrupted. And it was very exclusive to me. And at the time, I didn't know the term, but for me, it made me feel really small. It made me feel like what I had to say didn't matter. And that, being spoken to in any kind of way with any kind of regards to my feeling or myself as a professional made it seem like I didn't matter at all to my colleague as well. And so, as a result of that, I actually um, I ran into issues of not wanting to go to work. I would have moments where I would break down because I didn't want to be in that environment, right? And as awful as that sounds, on top of that, I was also experiencing some personal issues in my lives that was really struggling for me. And so, not only having personal issues, I was having work issues. It was a really dark place for me, right? And it was to a point where, is this what it's like to work in this type of environment? Because if that's the case, I started questioning whether or not I belonged or if that was something I wanted to continue in the industry. Thankfully, I didn't leave the industry. I left the role. And from there, I was thinking if I left the company and I go somewhere else, then it'd be a different experience. But moving on, I kind of realized that wasn't really the case either. That same chaotic environment was there. And then also being a part of meetings where I didn't see others that looked like me, it was very intimidating. And so that became a repetitive process for me. And as a result, I decided, I can either continue down this road of unhappiness, or I can make a difference, try to make a difference for myself, the quality of my life. And that was the SaaSCE Boutique, where I go in and I create an environment that I want it to be in that includes everyone and not just those who had the traditional IT background. So that's just kind of my big why as to what led me to where I'm at now.
Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things I want to pick up on, when we have problems in our personal lives, whatever they may be, it can sometimes knock our confidence so much that we struggle to deal with other
Yes.
situations particularly well. So when it comes to being in what I would call a toxic environment like that, if you're not, if you haven't got that self-belief and that confidence at the time, it's very difficult to stand up for yourself. And I think I mentioned this to you before we went live. There's a lot of
Hmm.
virtue signaling out there by
Yes.
companies about how
Yes.
they focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. But in reality, when you speak to the people in the organizations, it isn't like that at all. And
Right.
you made the decision to stride out on your own and create your own success away from that toxicity. But what can we do to encourage individuals, leaders, companies? What can we do to encourage them to actually embrace it? Or is there not anything we can do because people have to be good people to realize it first? That's the question.
Right. So that's a good point you make, because just as myself, I thought I had what was the dream job at one point, that did exactly what you described of promoting diversity, equity, inclusion within the organization, until I joined and I realized no one looked like me. And then it just seemed like, oh, this isn't actually what it seemed to be. So in hindsight, if I'm, as a leader myself, what are the things that I'm doing now to be the leader that I've always wanted, which is inclusive, to my team and also spread kindness, the biggest thing for me is to create a safe space for my
Yeah,
employees, being able to have an opportunity for them to speak their mind to me, tell me some things that they're struggling with, or even things that they wish I would do better in. Being able to be receptive to that feedback to them has allowed us to have fluid conversations between each of us. And I think that's really important, especially when you have a new employee coming on board
yeah,
that's trying to learn the culture of an organization as well as the role, and kind of getting out of their head of imposter syndrome, right? So
yeah.
being open to that safe space is a great start. Another point is routine diversity training. Diversity and inclusion training, I think, is key as well. And that's something that I'm hoping to adopt as well, is that we're not just talking about it, right? We're also having structured activities on how we can implement this in our daily lives, whether professionally or personally, because I think they both go hand in hand when it
Well,
comes to creating a
I think
culture like that.
you're absolutely right, and it has to start with the person, with the personal, doesn't it, for it to actually mean
Yes,
anything. One of
yes.
the things I've seen, especially, and I'm not pointing the finger at the tech industry, it's just that I've been working in it now for the last 3 years. With some startups and I suppose more established firms, you find that through unconscious bias, that the people who
Mm,
set up the firm end up employing more and more people like them. And I don't just mean from a race or gender perspective, I mean from a mindset perspective as well, because we all like people like ourselves. And if you look at the groups that we stay in, we're very much like those people. And then what happens with
yes,
these organizations is they get to a point where they're really struggling because
yes,
they've got no diversity in the workplace, no diversity of thought in the workplace, especially. And I think businesses should look into and understand that more about the benefits of having a diverse workforce. And that's diverse in
right.
every aspect because we all bring something different to the table, right?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And when we're looking at the cybersecurity perspective, when you're trying to identify your cyber risk, having that diverse input and that perspective can help you identify things that you may not have thought of before. And so, in turn, you're creating a more innovative solution to your problems that you may not have seen before.
100%. And from a middle-aged white 50-year-old man here, the the mindset that I've got, especially if you're a defender in the cybersecurity industry, I would argue you need much more diversity than me within your organization to be matching the mindsets of the people who are doing the attacks at the moment as well. And I think again,
Right.
we need to take that into consideration more. Eat, it's great to see you. There's a question here, Jada. I'm going to bring it up if that's okay with you. Excuse me. How can one foster inclusivity in a company that isn't very diverse but is trying to take the right steps to be inclusive? That's a great question, Pizza.
That is a great question. And so in cybersecurity, a term that we hear fondly of is a top-down approach, right? And if
Yeah,
we're trying to implement policies or a new workflow or something, it has to come from the top first and then trickle its way down. So I would say for a company that's interested in creating a more inclusive environment, it has to start with those leaders, the CEOs, the C-suite executives that have pull in the company and that have say in how things are run in the company. If you can't get their support, it really is an uphill battle when you're trying to go from an individual contributor level and trying to work your way up. It's just a lot of friction in that direction, unfortunately.
and I think the other problem is, do you have access to have conversations with the person in authority, the person in leadership, who's the one leading the business? And it's finding maybe advocates within the business who do have the ear of the leadership for them to try
Mm,
and I don't know. I mean, I think the problem, in all honesty, with a lot of businesses is that they're run by people, my age, 10 years older, a little bit older than that. They've got very fixed mindsets when it comes to a lot of
yeah,
things. And I honestly think until we see people like me, not people like me, that's an awful thing to say, people
don't
similar
say
to
that.
me, where you see us retire, then maybe we will see that change. Because I just don't know, when you've got that kind of ingrained mindset out there, it's very difficult for anyone to come in and change that. Otherwise, I suppose the alternative to that is, just because if you're in an organization and you're a manager and you're a leader, but you're not at the top of it, there's no reason why you can't try and affect positive change with your own team, is there?
Right. That's a good example. And that still follows that top-down approach as well. As a manager yourself, you can be the first to exemplify that type of behavior, that type of community, and your team can have a positive effect from that. And from there, that shows proof of concept there that, hey,
Yeah,
my team is really receiving this really well. Now let's try your team. What do you think your team, how would they respond to it? And so collectively as a group, you can encourage that kind of environment and it can work its way up that way as well.
absolutely. Okay, we've talked about inclusiveness quite a lot, but the other word that we used in the title for this show was kindness, which is,
Yes,
I think everyone watching will agree, probably something that we haven't got enough of in the world right
right.
now. How do we, I mean, this is definitely a personal thing, right? How do we encourage people to be more kind and show more kindness to people around them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it points back to emotional intelligence, right? Sometimes if we're sitting in a meeting and someone's hammering off something in a very aggressive tone, your quick reaction is to respond back in that same tone, right? And the next thing you
Yeah,
know, we have an explosion going on. And I think in that moment is when you kind of think, well, where is this person coming from? Why would they want to respond in that way? And as a result, you kind of start thinking in their head, well, maybe they're overworked. Maybe they have pressure from their management team that's stressing them out. So it's not directly you that they're upset with. Maybe they're upset with the process. And so when you kind of think of it in that sense, in that terms, you can kind of think, well, how can I improve the situation? Things like, I hear you. I know this is frustrating. Empathizing with them kind
yeah,
of help tone down that aggression and be like, look, we're on the same team here. And I want to get the job done just as quickly as you do. So let's figure out what it is that we can do together to solve it. And I think coming in from that perspective kind of helps heal some of that defensiveness and that aggressiveness and realize that, hey, at the end of the day, we're just here to work on the project together.
100%. I think the one word I'll throw out at the moment is ego. Um, Ego can get in the way of that sometimes. And again, it's that taking a moment to take a step back and put yourself outside the situation, as you rightly said, and take a moment to consider. You don't know what sort of day they had. You don't know what's going on in other
Mhm.
people's lives. And I think
Yeah,
kindness is the best remedy to people being aggressive and argumentative with you, because it's a very difficult thing for them to then continue on that vein. And you mentioned empathy and empathetic listening. I mean, active listening, empathetic listening, they're all super important skills. I think that if people haven't practiced them much in the past, they can definitely be improved. And it makes a
right.
huge difference to you and everyone around you if you can do that. Kaya, good to see you. Question from Kaya here as well. Are you asking this because of me, Kaya, or is that an ageist comment? Here we go. How does ageism play into all of this?
That's an interesting question. So when I think about my experience in my past roles with others, I do believe that different generations do play a different role. So for example, those of the older generation may be used to speaking to each other in a certain way or used to conducting business in a certain way. Rather, younger generations that are realizing that we can get the same work done if we just speak to each other kinder. I feel like that can play a role in whether we're trying to introduce more inclusiveness into our environments or if we're just trying to be more kind to each other. I had an example where uh, I was with colleagues who were sending very passive aggressive emails to each other, and they were all part of the older generation than I was. And in my response to their emails, I would say, "Oh, hey, I hope your day is going well." That's how I would start. Or I would say, "I hope you have exciting plans for the weekend," to kind of take the edge off a little bit. And then at the end of my emails, I would add that I appreciate their feedback or anything that they're able to provide to know that, hey, like you may not have all the answers, but whatever you have, I'm okay with and I appreciate it. So in that way, that's kind of lowered that edge with the older generation. And now
Yeah.
when I see emails from them, it's a little bit kinder as
You're
well.
disarming them, is what you're doing, aren't you? Disarming them with
Essentially.
kindness. Yeah.
I am. Yes, you fight kindness, right?
Yeah. But I think it's a great question, Kaya, about the ageism, because ageism works both ways as well, doesn't it? And I think we all have to be mindful of. I mean, I've got six children. My children range from he's 25 is my eldest this year, down to 6-year-old twins. So I've kind of got the full spectrum of different ages, and the difference even between, I suppose, the outlook of my 24, nearly 25-year-old and my 18-year-old are completely different. And
Hmm.
that's that generational shift that you keep seeing. I mean, there's definitely hope for the future, because my two older boys are more worried about the environment, more worried about
Hmm.
helping other people than they are chasing the money dream like people of my age were. I mean, we were programmed
Yeah,
that you had to get this job and then do this and then do this, and your whole life is like chasing that next thing all the time. And it's really toxic in itself,
it
because
is.
for me,
Yeah.
you have to find out what success means for you first before you start
Hmm.
chasing someone else's idea of it. And I chased someone else's idea of it for 45 years, and it didn't end particularly well, I've got to be honest.
Right. And
But
that's a good point you make about what does success look like for you. And I think for
yeah,
me, being able to spread kindness and my experience and say that going forward we don't have to take on the same actions as those before us. We can create a new
no.
path. And for me, expressing kindness and inclusion is success for me.
Oh, 100%. And I think there's no such thing as altruism, because being kind and helping other people is probably the most rewarding thing you can ever do. And I know we're talking about, I suppose, the work environment here, but in life in general, random acts of kindness is something that I strongly believe can make a huge difference to yours and other people's lives. And I don't mean giving money to vagrants or homeless people on the street. I could mean something as simple as smiling at someone who looks miserable, or just taking the time. I'm passionate about the older generation, so I was brought up by my nan, she passed away when she was 100. She was in her like mid 80s when I was born. And then my mum was quite old as well, who passed away last year. So for me, there's a lot of old people in society who are very lonely and very sad, and just
Mm,
taking 10-15 minutes to strike up a conversation, if you're in the supermarket or wherever you are, can really make such a difference on not just that person's day, but it selfishly it makes you feel really good as well. And I think the more people
yes.
realize that, the world would be such a better place, because we'd just all be walking
Right.
around smiling and helping each other.
Definitely. And to your point, though, I think about sometimes when I'm out driving and the commonality of road rage, right? Of
Yeah,
someone doing something that is just not right, right. So my perspective is, when situations like that happen, I'm always thinking, well, there was probably a reason for that. They're
yeah.
probably not having a good day. So rather than honking my horn or flicking my lights, I'll just slow down, let them over, or let them take the stop sign if they want. So in my way, I'm thinking, well, I could get angry, but then what does that solve?
It's just
Nothing.
going to give
So
you high blood pressure, make your heart race,
right.
and put you in a bad mood. I think
Yes.
you make it sound very easy. However, you do have to remove your ego from situations
Mm,
to do that. And I think maturity of thought, and I'm not talking about age here, because my 18-year-olds have got a mature mindset than I did have at 40 years old. It's being aware that your ego does drive some of those behaviors. And there's a book, I
mm,
think it's called The Chimp Paradox, and it talks about the two different parts of your brain, and one being the monkey side of the brain, that kind of that lizard, back to when we were in the caves, that fight or flight reflex. It comes into our lives at so many points, and that can
hmm.
also then trigger our egotistical responses and behaviors to things as well, which can be pretty toxic, can't it?
Right. Yeah,
I'm
I've
saying this
never heard of
because I
that.
used to be an arrogant, egotistical man a few years ago, and I look back on that with absolute horror. But let's move on from my checkered history. And it's has put another question in here. What are some red flags or potential green flags we can look out for before we sign on to a toxic culture environment? Great question. It's
That is a great question because it can be tricky, especially when you're in an interview. Excuse me, you're in an interview and they're only highlighting all of the great things, right? But just firsthand for me, when I do research on a company, if they are promoting that they're diverse, they provide equity or inclusion in their environment, I like to see who's liking their posts. Is it all internal staff that's liking the
It's
post,
just their
or
marketing team.
is it just their marketing team, right? Or is it just, outsiders that don't really work at the company? I think that would be a good sign, to kind of tell whether they're actually truly fighting the fight on inclusion. Because if their employees are on board and they feel included and collaborated with, they're going to collaborate with the organization publicly as well. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good sign to look out for.
I think it's a good sign in general, isn't it? When you're looking on LinkedIn at businesses posts, how many of their employees are actually engaging on there as to what the environment's like, full stop.
Right.
The other thing I suppose would be reaching out to people who work at that organization, maybe, just to find out from them what they find
Hmm.
the environment like. And we were talking about free pizza and free ping pong on a Friday before we went live. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a great place to work. It normally means they want
Right.
you to stay late and work late for the
Stay
same
longer.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. And watch out for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got about a minute or two left. I want to just bring this QR code up again. So for anyone who wants to check out, this is the SaaSCE Boutique. This is Jada's firm. And just talk to me again for the last couple of minutes about the service that you provide and the sort of companies that you help, please, Jada.
Yeah, yeah. So at the SaaSCE Boutique, we provide services to mainly SaaS companies. So if your product or solution is in the cloud, we can help with meeting or identifying what your compliance requirements are and what solutions that you need to implement to help meet those compliance requirements, but also with internal auditing services as well. Some frameworks require you to have that external auditor come in and do that internal audit for you. So we're able to provide that as well as a service to you, and not only give you a report per se, but more so help you understand what do those requirements look like for you down the road, so that you're well tooled with the information that you need to know to not only obtain your certifications but also maintain your certifications down the road. So
And is
that
there
is what
is
we're
there a
about.
particular size of business that you're working with that you think that you add particular value to, or do you work right across the spectrum?
Currently, small to medium companies, usually the companies that don't have that traditional security team or GRC team to help them out with those certification processes. That's where we're at right now. For me, customers that need that area of focus really need to meet that for whether their customers need or the industry that they're in.
And as a rule, our industry is pretty bad at serving the small to medium business sector, and I think most vendors out there, especially, are aimed at the enterprise market because that's where the money is. And I do feel
Right.
that a lot of SMBs have been left behind a little bit. In fact, I was talking to Greg Tomczyk from Valor Cybersecurity, who are based near DC. He's been running free 45-minute assessments for small businesses. And I would have thought the reaction would have been, no thanks, we're not interested, we don't need that. But the reaction's been the opposite to that. It's been all we hear about in the media is cyber attacks and cyber stuff, but absolutely no
Right.
one's bothering to speak to us about it. And I think
Right.
if you look at the world, 50% of the income and the GD the gross domestic product of each nation, or especially the US and the UK, 50% is from big firms, 50% is from small firms as well.
Hmm.
So we've got this huge market out there that's being really underserved. And as a community, we're going to start trying to empower people who are trying to break into the industry. So they've got a little bit of lab type experience, they've got plenty of exams, but they've never had a job. Well, we'd like to give them the tools to go out and start having those conversations in the community, because I think it's going to help. It's going to help the community, and it'll also then
Yeah.
help, if they're looking for a job with you, if you had two people come to you, one with a load of exams, the other one the same exams, but they've been going out actively speaking to local businesses
Hmm.
and trying to help them. I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? But then it's back to finding the people who are prepared to go out and do that, because it isn't everyone's. I'd say this is a bit of a British saying. It's not everyone's cup of tea to want to go out knocking on doors and asking businesses if they need help. But I really do think it's a great way for people to show their passion and gain some
Passion,
experience in the
yes.
industry. Yeah.
Yes, I would definitely agree. Passion trumps, experience sometimes. and
Yeah,
because we can't always have, the on paper experience that everyone's looking for. So definitely with the passion, it could take you far.
100%. Okay, let me just bring myself back up on here. Jada, thank you so much for today. It's been amazing. I'd love to have you back on the show again. Whereabouts in the US are you based?
I am in Georgia.
Okay, I haven't been there yet. So as soon as it gets on the InfoSec Live list, I hope to meet you in person as well. Uh,
Likewise, yes.
Um, everyone who's watching, just a quick one before we go, a little bit random for those if you're still tuned in. I've got through the post today a few of these. I'll open it up so you can see it. They are professional lockpick training kits, and you get 4 practice locks. I don't know if the camera's zooming in on them. There we go, or not. 4 plastic locks, practice locks, and then you get this very nice, unless one of my children has stolen it out of the box, because that is very possible. You then get this little set of lock picks and keys as well. I'm going to be announcing a giveaway for these because they've been sent to me for free. I'm going to do a giveaway in the community. I'm going to practice tonight first to see if I can do a video to show you how they work, but I'm not holding out much hope. So if anyone's interested in getting their hands on one of these lock picking sets, join the community, jump in the chat, and I'll drop something in there next day or two. And one more thing, as Columbo used to say, for anyone old enough to remember that TV series, we are hosting an online cyber OSINT escape room on June the 11th for 10 lucky community members. We've purchased the services of Gentium UK Cyber to come in and run this online cyber escape room. I went in person to one with them earlier on this week. It was absolutely fantastic. So again, if you're interested in getting involved in that, jump in the community and there'll be more information there soon. But Jada and everyone, thank you. If you've been watching, please do like and subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell to be notified of future content. Any wise words from you, Jada, before we sign off and enjoy the weekend?
Yes, always stay inclusive and kind wherever you go.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think for everyone watching, if you get a chance over the weekend, why not try a random act of kindness? See how it works. See how much of a smile it puts on your face as well. And on that note, have an amazing weekend, everyone. Jada, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope to see you soon. Take care.
Likewise. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.